The moment Lady C dropped those words, the entire atmosphere around Harry and Meghan changed almost overnight, because suddenly this was no longer just another internet rumor spinning around social media at 3 in the morning. No, this time, people started whispering about California hospital staff, internal conversations, nervous phone calls, and records that allegedly triggered concern behind closed doors. And according to royal insiders watching this unfold, Meghan absolutely hated the fact that the spotlight was moving away from emotional interviews and straight toward paperwork, timelines, and medical details nobody expected to become public conversation. The second hospital employees were suddenly mentioned in connection to Archie's records. The internet exploded into total chaos because people immediately began asking the one question Meghan never once dominating headlines. What exactly is everyone trying so hard to protect?
I've spoken to doctors, nurses, many women who've given birth to children, and all of them say the same thing. Those photographs of Meghan and the way the baby bump performed are totally unexpected, and they're not aware of any baby, any pregnant woman who is genuinely pregnant having her bump perform the way Meghan's has performed.
And here is where the situation reportedly became even more uncomfortable. Sources connected to royal media circles started quietly claiming that the issue was not about one dramatic discovery, but about several tiny details piling up together in a way that made the entire story look messy instead of polished. That is what turned this from gossip into something far more dangerous, because once people start comparing timelines, hospital statements, security movements, and old interviews side by side, every contradiction suddenly becomes gasoline on the fire. Lady C allegedly hinted that individuals connected to the California medical side of Archie's birth were caught off guard after renewed public attention started circling online, and apparently some people were not expecting old details to resurface so aggressively years later. Now suddenly everyone is revisiting old footage. Everyone is replaying interviews. Everyone is zooming into dates, signatures, announcements, and even the wording used during official statements, because critics are saying the Sussex story has changed too many times for people to simply ignore it anymore. What makes this situation even worse for Meghan is that public patience has shifted dramatically over the last year. There was a time when questioning anything connected to Harry and Meghan immediately triggered backlash online, but now the mood feels completely different. The skepticism is louder, the frustration is harsher, and people are no longer satisfied with vague emotional explanations. They want consistency, they want transparency, they want details that actually line up. The palace, meanwhile, is reportedly staying silent for one very strategic reason. The royal family understands something Meghan keeps underestimating. Silence creates mystery, and mystery creates speculation. The less Buckingham Palace says, the more the public starts investigating things on its own. That is exactly why this controversy keeps growing larger every single week instead of fading away. The internet has basically turned into a giant detective room filled with amateur investigators comparing screenshots and archived clips like they are building a criminal case.
New question marks over the veracity of Princess Lilibet's birth certificate, and it also raises serious concerns about whether Meghan Markle has been honest with the public about her daughter's birth.
But the real shock came when online discussions allegedly started reaching people connected to the hospital itself, because according to rumors flying around royal circles, certain former staff members were suddenly being discussed in private conversations connected to Archie's documentation timeline. Nobody officially confirmed anything, but the mere idea that hospital personnel were being pulled into public controversy sent social media into absolute meltdown. Why? Because once medical institutions become part of the conversation, people automatically assume there must be something serious underneath the surface. And Meghan reportedly did not react calmly to this. In fact, several commentators are now claiming she became furious behind the scenes because she believed these discussions crossed a line she never expected the public to approach. The Sussex brand has always depended heavily on emotional storytelling, victim narratives, and carefully managed appearances, but paperwork does not operate emotionally. Records are cold. Dates are cold. Documents are cold. That is why critics say this entire situation became dangerous territory for them. Then came another twist nobody saw coming. Some royal watchers began questioning why certain details surrounding Archie's birth announcement looked so unusually different compared to previous royal births. Suddenly, old comparisons between William and Catherine's public hospital appearance and Harry and Meghan's much more private handling started resurfacing everywhere online. Critics immediately argued that the secrecy itself created the environment for speculation. Others defended Harry and Meghan by saying they simply wanted privacy after years of media harassment. But by then, the damage was already done because once doubt enters the conversation, every silence starts looking suspicious whether it deserves to or not.
I want you to pay attention to this number right here. The 105-202, the 105-2021, 163-206. That number is incredibly important. This is directly from the government's website, guys. And this is reviewing a birth certificate, birth area code. Okay? And then it tells you what it is. It's the first 3 digits. You remember the 105 that you saw? Is the birth area code. It tells you in which state the child was born. We have seen that in Lilibet's birth certificate. It states that her number is 105. So surely that is California, right? It turns out that California is 104. And let's not forget that Archie is 6th in line to the throne and Lilibet is 7th in line to the throne.
And this is where Lady C reportedly intensified the controversy even further because she allegedly suggested that renewed attention around California hospital staff was connected to broader concerns involving official records and inconsistencies people have discussed for years. Suddenly, social media exploded with theories about codes, forms, missing confirmations, and timeline discrepancies. Some people called it absurd conspiracy culture. Others insisted the questions were completely reasonable considering Archie and Lilibet remain in the royal line of succession. The intensity became impossible to ignore because even people who normally avoid royal gossip started noticing how strangely emotional the entire situation had become. Meghan supporters accused critics of cruelty. Critics accused Meghan of manipulation. Neutral observers simply sat there watching the entire thing spiral into a full-scale public war. What makes this especially explosive is the timing. Meghan and Harry are already facing brutal public criticism over their popularity decline, media appearances, and repeated complaints about royal life while still monetizing royal connections. That frustration has been quietly building for months, and now this controversy landed directly on top of it like a lit match thrown into dry grass. Even more awkwardly, commentators began pointing out that the Sussexes themselves helped create this obsession with public scrutiny because they continuously reveal selective private details whenever it benefits their image while demanding absolute privacy whenever questions become uncomfortable. That contradiction is driving people insane online. One moment the children are hidden completely. The next moment carefully staged glimpses appear in documentaries, podcasts, or social media campaigns. Critics say the inconsistency feels calculated rather than protective. Then whispers started spreading that some royal insiders were becoming increasingly nervous about how far this discussion could go publicly if more alleged hospital-related stories surfaced. Nobody wants an international argument involving medical privacy, royal succession, and public trust colliding together at the same time because once those topics merge, the controversy becomes almost impossible to contain. What really pushed this controversy into overdrive, though, was the growing belief online that somebody behind the scenes may have quietly underestimated how obsessed the public would become with details surrounding Archie and Lilibet once questions about records started spreading again. At first, it looked like just another passing royal scandal, the kind that trends for 48 hours before disappearing into the endless chaos of celebrity gossip. But then something changed. People noticed that every time the topic resurfaced, the reactions around Meghan seemed unusually intense. Commentators began claiming she was becoming increasingly frustrated with how impossible it had become to shut the conversation down completely, because instead of fading away, the speculation kept mutating into new directions every single week. And suddenly, the hospital angle became the center of attention, not because anyone officially accused staff paragraph of wrongdoing, but because the mere suggestion that conversations involving California medical personnel were happening at all made the story feel bigger, darker, and far more serious than random internet gossip. People started asking themselves why hospital employees would allegedly even need to be mentioned in the first place. What triggered renewed scrutiny? Who started revisiting old details? And why now, after so much time had already passed? That timing is what many royal watchers cannot stop talking about. Meghan and Harry are no longer operating from a position of overwhelming public sympathy the way they once were. The Netflix glow faded. The Oprah shockwave faded. Even the explosive memoir headlines eventually lost momentum. But controversies surrounding the children never fully disappear because those discussions connect directly to the monarchy itself, and once royal succession enters public debate, emotions become absolutely explosive. The internet, meanwhile, became completely ruthless. Old clips resurfaced showing Meghan discussing motherhood. Old interviews with Harry were dissected frame by frame. People analyzed body language, speech patterns, dates, photographs, and even hospital procedures as though they were solving some giant hidden puzzle. And according to commentators following this chaos closely, that level of scrutiny allegedly started making certain individuals around the Sussexes deeply uncomfortable because they realized the public was no longer simply consuming the story, they were investigating it. One particularly explosive rumor claimed that discussions involving hospital staff allegedly created panic behind the scenes because nobody expected online speculation to become so relentless. Again, nothing official was confirmed, but that did not matter anymore because perception had already taken control of the narrative. In royal controversies, perception is everything. Once people believe there might be hidden layers beneath the surface, every silence suddenly looks strategic instead of innocent. And Meghan reportedly hates that more than anything because for years she managed to dominate the narrative emotionally. She could redirect attention toward racism allegations, media treatment, mental health struggles, or palace tensions whenever criticism intensified. But this controversy operates differently. It is not emotional enough to deflect easily. It revolves around records, procedures, and unanswered questions. Critics say that makes it much harder to control publicly because facts and timelines do not disappear simply because someone gives another emotional interview. Still, Lady C allegedly believes the story is far from over. In fact, some commentators are now claiming the California hospital controversy may only be the beginning of a much larger wave of scrutiny tied to the Sussex narrative overall. That possibility has royal gossip communities practically vibrating with anticipation, because if more alleged inconsistencies emerge publicly, the pressure surrounding Harry and Meghan could become absolutely unbearable. Meanwhile, Harry reportedly remains trapped in the middle of this storm, and that might actually be the saddest part of the entire saga. Critics say he looks increasingly isolated, emotionally exhausted, and disconnected from both the royal institution he left behind and the glamorous celebrity world he thought he was entering. Every controversy surrounding Meghan eventually circles back toward him because people still see him as Diana's son, the prince who once had enormous public goodwill before years of interviews, lawsuits, complaints, and scandals changed the atmosphere completely. Now, many royal observers are wondering whether he privately regrets how far everything has spiraled, because this is no longer just tabloid drama anymore. This is turning into a permanent credibility battle, and the internet never forgets credibility battles. Every new rumor revives old rumors. Every unanswered question reopens older questions. Every attempt to silence discussion only convinces critics there must be something worth hiding. That vicious cycle is exactly why this controversy keeps surviving despite the lack of official confirmation behind most of the claims. Then came perhaps the most uncomfortable realization of all. And even people who think the rumors are ridiculous admit the Sussexes themselves helped create the environment where these theories thrive. The secrecy, the contradictions, the selective disclosures, the inconsistent public appearances, the constant tension between demanding privacy while monetizing personal family stories. All of it combined together into the perfect breeding ground for suspicion. And now the entire situation has transformed into something far bigger than Archie's records alone. It has become a symbol of public distrust, a symbol of celebrity image management colliding headfirst with royal tradition, a symbol of what happens when emotional storytelling begins colliding with relentless internet scrutiny 24 hours a day. Meanwhile, Meghan reportedly remains furious that Lady C continues fueling discussion around the controversy because every new comment reignites the entire cycle again. Social media explodes. Commentators upload videos. TikTok investigators start posting theories. Royal fans begin arguing viciously in comment sections for days. And through all of it, the palace remains mostly silent while the speculation grows louder on its own.